Hey everybody. Have you ever played a game of Total War Warhammer 3 where you're fighting a battle and sometimes the units just seem to have a mind of their own? And in particular, they seem to kind of ignore the orders that you give them to do something else instead. Whether it's maybe cavalry who have gotten one or two of their soldiers bogged down in an enemy formation and can't get out, and you've tried to get the entire unit to go somewhere else, but they all stop because of those one or two units that are bogged down, and sometimes they'll turn around and go charging right back into where they all were a moment ago, even though you had told them to leave. Or maybe we're talking about some missile units who, unbeknownst to you, there was a tiny little ridge line in front of them, and they just refused to shoot over it, even though it looks like they ought to be able to. Or maybe they just aren't shooting into a melee because there are some friendly units that are in the way, whether or not those units really do seem like they should be stopping them from being able to fire or not. Well, anyway, if your answer to that question is no, you've never had that happen to you, then I don't really believe you, because if you've ever played much in the way of Warhammer 3, then you know that this sort of thing does happen all the time. So anyway, the reason I mention that is because there is a new mod out here that I have been sort of messing around with for the last couple of hours, and it's going to require, I think, quite a bit more testing. I think this is actually going to be the kind of mod that you want to. I personally am going to add this to my load order for pretty much all of my Let's Play campaigns, I believe, moving forward, because I want to get a buildup of data, enough evidence over time to see how much it actually does affect the battles. But the early signs are fairly positive. Anyway, it is the mod Stop Idling Improved Units Reaction Speed. And what this mod does is several different things, including addressing some of those issues that I just mentioned. Now, I will say that I don't have definitive evidence that this is working perfectly, or I should say that it fixes the problem completely. I have been messing around with it, but of course, when you set up these custom battles and you're trying to recreate problems that happen fairly frequently in, just in the course of everyday playing, it's sometimes a little bit hard to get things to the units to do exactly what you want them to do, and then to get a good comparison of vanilla versus mod. So I have very high hopes for this one. I also want to say, if anybody else has any experience with this particular mod, please do add some comments below, because I do have high hopes for it, but I think that it's going to be something that's going to take a little bit of time to really get a good sense of just how much of an impact it has. So anyway, I'm just going to read out here what the mod does. It's pretty short and sweet what the mod author says, and he can explain it more succinctly than I can. So a very simple and lightweight mod improves the way your units react to commands when pinned, firing, or idling. The pinning improvement, this is the one that probably has me maybe the most intrigued. Ranged units and artillery are far more susceptible to be pinned in melee. Hybrid units swap between melee and ranged weapons quicker as a result. Idle melee units will react faster when coming into contact with enemy units. And then here's the big one for me. When ordered to move, units will try their best to follow the order instead of going back into the fight just because a lone unit has been trapped in combat. So I interpret that as when a small part of that unit has been trapped in combat. It will still happen if too many units are pinned, and I think models is maybe the word that I would use there. It will still happen if too many models out of your unit are pinned. Anyway, so yeah, that's obviously a really huge one. I know that those of you who have watched my Let's Plays know that I'm complaining all the time that units aren't following the orders that I had expected them to when I go back and look at them a moment later, because yeah, they got bogged down. They bumped into an enemy unit, and the next thing you know, they've completely forgotten the attack orders that I gave them and you know, where I told them to go. Anyway, firing improvement increased line of sight threshold to become obstructed so that even if less troops are able to shoot, they'll still fire on the enemy, and decreased the obstruction radius of friendly units, especially for weapons that have friendly fire. Now a man can shoot above the head of a dwarf. So, the very nice little addition here at the very end is the mod should never need an update, so that's great to hear. Anyway, yeah, like I said, I'm going to be adding this. I have high hopes for it. It does certainly seem, at least in my testing, it has seemed subtle so far, but I know this is the kind of thing that as I play more and more often, I'm going to definitely build up a greater pool of evidence from which to determine exactly how well it's working. But anyway, I wanted to share this with you guys because these are obviously issues that have been in the game for a very long time. I think some of us despair of CA ever actually fixing them. I've gotten my hopes up before in the past with some of the things that CA has said that they're working on or that they had even fixed, and it turns out that they're not always fixed as much as we might have hoped. So if the modders can do it, that's great. This one looks really, really positive. If you guys have any experience with it, please do leave your own comments. But yeah, I'm looking forward to using this. I do feel like this is going to add a lot of value moving forward. Okay, anyway, that was it for today. That's all I had. Thanks everybody for watching and listening, and I will see you all in the next video.